The last of milk. Winter in Nigeria froze everything, from the well water to the jars of pickles and the little people's milk. As New Year passed and February came, it grew even more severe. Bulba and Fern were overwhelmed by hunger and the cold, and stayed in bed all day long. Now and then Lily would heat a stone in the hearth and bring it wrapped in a cloth to the little people's home. This was their only form of heating. Just as Fern had feared, Lily seemed to be having a terrible time at school. But she didn't utter a word of complaint to Aunt April or Granny Melody. At first, Ethan had played with her at school, but then he'd been severely scolded by his mother and stopped talking to her. Even if he bumped into her on the way to school, he pretended he hadn't seen her. And so Lily found herself shunned by the group and was left with no one to play with. She started coming straight home from school and sat by the hearth learning how to make straw sandals with Granny Melody. This was the homework school had set for her. She also learned how to twist straw into a rope to help meet the local supply quotas set by the army. In February, the air raids on Tokyo and Osaka grew even fiercer, and news of them reached even here in the mountains of Nigeria. Arlo told Iris that big groups of evacuee children had arrived in the town where he was living, and whenever the radio announced that a large number of enemy planes were headed for Tokyo, many of them burst into tears worrying about their parents. Sometimes Arlo would bring his wife, a white pigeon called Tama, to visit Robin and Iris. They were looking forward to moving to the nearby forest once the winter was over. One day in March, Arlo saw some bird's-eye primroses blooming through the snow and hurried over to Robin and Iris with one of the flowers to bring them the good news. It's spring. Spring is just round the corner. But the house in the mountains was shrouded in deathly silence. Arlo poked the flower into a gap in the lattice window, then flew up into the larch tree as usual. "Cuckoo," he called. After a while, Robin came out alone. "What's the matter, Robin? You don't look very well." "But spring has already arrived in town, you know. Did you see the flower I brought you?" Arlo asked enthusiastically. Robin shook his head. Arlo looked at him in surprise. "What's up? Are you sick?" Robin shook his head again. Then he said, as if forcing it out, "The house in Tokyo burned down. Our little book room burned too. Poor Lily's fallen ill." Arlo ducked his head and spread his wings. "Is it serious?" Robin shook his head as if to say he didn't know. Iris was crying with her too. "Lily's got a really high fever. Sometimes she cries out in her dreams." Arlo shook his head sorrowfully. "Oh dear, so that house burned down too. That old house by the big Zelkova tree, right? Well, I'm going home now. Please give that flower to Lily. Tell her that spring will be here soon, okay?" Robin watched his big friend fly off into the sky over the forest until he disappeared, and then dragged himself back to the house. Robin picked up the flower that had fallen down outside the window and took it to Lily's bedside. Lily was motionless, sleeping. Granny Melody had stayed at her side the whole night, but now she went through to the hearth in the kitchen, and the only sound to be heard in the room was the tick-tock of the grandfather clock. By Lily's pillow was the letter from Joy giving a brief account of the air raid on March 10th. "On March 10th our house burned down. I am now reflecting on how glad I am that I sent you to Nigeria, Lily. There have been many times when I wondered if it was a mistake to let you go all on your own when you're so young. But Lily, had you and the others been here, I would have had to worry about all of you too during that terrible night. Your brother Shin was a huge help, you know. He was far calmer than I was. When the incendiary bombs started raining down on us, he took all our essentials out of the house and put them in the shelter while I just watched all our trees in the garden go up in flames, like Christmas tree lights coming on. Our last remaining patch of lawn and the plot where I was growing sweet potatoes soon went up too, surrounding us in flames. Shin pulled me by the hand and ran towards a place that didn't seem to be on fire. In the smoke we passed by Mrs. Ikeda from next door and said goodbye as we each went our different ways. We never spoke very much, but it was like talking to a dear old friend. I haven't seen her since. The next morning, when I went back to our house, it wasn't there. All that was left of our beloved little book room was a pile of book-shaped ashes, still smoking. It all burned down, everything. But Lily, you and the little people are safe and sound, and Shin, Finn, and Daddy are all alive. That gives me the strength to pick myself up and look for somewhere new to live. Now Shin and I are living at the address on the envelope. From here I don't have so far to go to see Daddy. Well, take care of yourself, Lily. Shin sends his love too. When the letter had arrived the day before, Lily had had to read it out aloud to Aunt April and Granny Melody. When she finished, Aunt April had commented how spineless Joy was. How come she had just run away instead of putting out the incendiary bombs as they fell? Lily had kept her eyes downturned, chewing on her finger. Then she went out to the shed to get firewood and didn't come back for a long time. Late that night, she had come down with a fever and a fit of wheezing like her long-forgotten asthma that left her hardly able to breathe. Granny Melody stayed by her side, rubbing her back. Lily tried to escape her and cried out in her dreams, gasping for breath. All night long red flames burned in Lily's eyes. Big Zelkova trees burned like so many Christmas trees. Beneath them her house became a ball of fire and sent sparks up into the sky. Inside she could hear Balba and Fern calling help. Help us. Would Robin and Iris burn to death too? No, they mustn't. Lily writhed and shouted, "Don't die." She could hear Robin's and Iris's voices coming from the midst of the sparks flying up into the sky. Goodbye, Lily, goodbye. Lily smelt the fresh scent of flowers and opened her eyes. A pure white sweet-smelling flower lay beside her pillow. Next to it, little Robin was looking up at her anxiously. Oh, thank goodness. Robin and the others didn't die after all. Robin's here with me. She tried to reach out for the flower, but she felt as though she'd been beaten black and blue and lacked the strength even to move her hand. Thank you, she told Robin with her eyes. Robin went nervously up to her and placed the flower on the edge of her bedding. Then he looked up at her with his sparkling brown eyes, as if to say get better soon, and left her alone. Around noon, Granny Melody came shuffling into the room and held her hand on Lily's forehead. It felt pleasantly cool. What can I get for you? She asked. If you tell me what you want to eat, I'll make it for you. Tell me what you want. Lily couldn't answer. Right now she wanted something cold and sweet. What was it her mother Joy always brought her when she was sick? She squeezed her eyes shut and tried to remember. Ice cream? Stewed apples? That was it. Right now, what she wanted was thinly sliced apples stewed in sugar and chilled. When she didn't answer, Granny Melody told her, if you don't eat anything, you won't get better quickly. Last night you kept saying you wanted milk. Wasn't there a can of milk in your emergency bag? Lily's heart started pounding. Had she let on about the milk while she was feverish? Or maybe blind old Granny Melody had already catoned on to the little people some time ago. Various possibilities whirled around her tired head. If I tell Granny Melody that I want some milk, maybe she'll open that can of condensed milk and make some up for me. If I don't drink all of it, the little people will be able to finish it. But is it okay to do that? I'm supposed to put the milk in the blue glass goblet for them myself, but if I have to stay in bed for a few days, sooner or later I'll have to ask Granny Melody to make some for me, in which case it might as well be now, I suppose. With her heart in her mouth, Lily asked, "Could you make me a little milk?" Granny Melody looked relieved and went off to the kitchen. Lily worried how she would manage to open the can. And how come she knew about the milk? But she soon returned carrying a tray, upon which she'd placed a coffee bowl that Lily had never seen before filled with hot milk and sat by Lily's pillow to help her drink it. But Lily had wanted cold milk. Later, Granny Melody. I'll drink it later, she said. Granny Melody put the bowl down on the tray and held her hand to Lily's forehead again. Lily closed her eyes. After a while, Granny Melody quietly rose and shuffled out of the room. Lily opened her eyes. Steam was still rising from the milk. Robin. Iris. Come here, please. Come and take this milk, she whispered, her mouth dry. Bring the blue glass goblet and take some of it, quick. Fern and the others heard Lily calling. Balba and Fern looked at each other. Robin and Iris started to fix the rope to go and get the milk right away. Is it okay to do this? Muttered Fern timorously. But what else could they do? Balba told the children, okay, go and take the blue glass goblet. But if you hear footsteps, don't make a sound. If that old woman doesn't hear anything, she won't notice you're there. Robin and Iris went down the rope and took the glass from beneath the old sedge hat. Then, as quietly as they could, they climbed onto the tray and scooped up some milk from the bowl. Iris's heart pounded at the faint sound of the glass scraping the edge of the bowl. Robin licked the milk from the rim of the glass. Lily closed her eyes. The two little people crept back up to the shelf carrying the glass. It wasn't easy, but thanks to Lily, today the family could drink their fill of warm, sweet milk. A while later, Lily opened her eyes. About half the milk was gone. She reached out a shaky hand, picked up the bowl, and took a sip of the now cold milk. It tasted just like the ice cream she'd dreamt of earlier. Cradling the bowl in both hands, she drank up the rest of it. When Granny Melody came padding back in a little later, Lily was fast asleep. Fumbling around with her hands, Granny Melody checked that the bowl was empty, then, after straightening the bedclothes, took the bowl back to the kitchen. This unusual arrangement between Lily and the Little People family was to continue for some time. Lily's fever didn't go away for several days, and she couldn't keep anything but milk down. Aunt April was so worried about her that she went some distance in the snow to get hold of some eggs and apples, but Lily couldn't face the slimy raw eggs. She happily ate the apple that Aunt April mashed for her, but other than that she took nothing other than milk for 10 days. Luckily, Robin and Iris were able to help themselves to some milk from the bowl by Lily's pillow without ever being suspected by the big people. "Balba, how long can we go on like this?" Fern asked anxiously from time to time. She was old-fashioned and couldn't bear the thought of taking food from the same cup as a human, persisting in the old belief that they should live off the milk brought to them in the blue glass goblet. Robin and Iris laughed at their mother for this superstition, but soon Fern's worry took a different tack. "Iris, Robin, are you sure you didn't spill any of the milk when you were bringing it back?" she asked one day, seeing that the blue glass goblet was only about 2/3 full. "That's all there was today," Iris replied quietly. "Lily drank it before us. She usually waits for us to take some first," Robin grumbled, remembering how difficult it had been to scoop the milk into the glass from the bottom of the bowl. Fern didn't say anything. The next day, Robin and Iris brought the blue glass goblet back only just over half full. Fern sighed. "It can't be helped. Lily is getting better. When you recover from an illness, you get terribly hungry," said Balba to smooth things over. The next day, the blue glass was barely half full. Fern took out some of her emergency cheese to make up the meager meal. The following day, the little people watched from the shelf as Lily tried to resist reaching out for the bowl. First, she took just a sip of milk, then snuggled back down into bed. And then, just as Iris and Robin were on their way down from the shelf, she couldn't stand it any longer and reached out a hand from under the quilt and gulped down some milk before quickly burying herself back under the covers. That day, Iris and Robin took home the blue glass just a third full of milk, barely any at all. "Lily doesn't seem to be thinking about us anymore," complained Robin. "She must know there's hardly any left for us." Neither Fern nor Balba said anything. Iris looked as though she was about to cry and retreated into a corner of the room. The next day, when Lily asked Granny Melody to make up some milk, she replied uncomfortably, "Lily, there's no more milk after today. I've somehow made it last this long by mixing it with that powdered milk you had. But it's gone now, so be a good girl and have some rice broth or porridge instead." Lily sat up with a start. "Really? No more milk?" Granny Melody was taken aback by Lily's furious reaction and opened her unseeing eyes wide. "Yes, really. It's all gone. Think about it, Lily. You've been sick for over a fortnight now, and all you've had during that time is milk." Lily burst into tears. Granny Melody frowned. She had spoilt her too much while she was sick, and she was behaving just like a baby, but once she understood there really was no milk, she would have no choice but to eat something else. She went back out to the kitchen to heat up the last of the milk for her. Lily was still crying in bed, chewing her thumb now. "I'm sorry. Balba, Fern, Iris, Robin. I knew I shouldn't, but in the end I drank all your milk. I knew there wasn't much left, but I kept thinking, just a little more, it'll be okay, just a little more. And now I've drunk it all up. What will become of you? I can't go and ask Ethan for some anymore. And I can't go to Hondo while I'm sick in bed. There's still too much snow outside. Oh, what can I do?" "Iris, Robin, I hope you don't die. Lily heard Granny Melody come shuffling back into the room. As usual, she put down the tray and went away again. Torn between wanting to drink the milk and knowing Iris and the others would die if she did, Lily huddled down under the covers and bit her thumbnail hard. Hurry! Hurry! Robin, come and take the milk quickly. It's the last of the milk, so at least this time take the blue glass goblet full to the brim. Eventually, she couldn't stand it any longer and peeped out from under the covers to see that half the milk had gone from the bowl. Relieved, she drank the rest of the bowl down. If I ask Aunt April, I'm sure she'll be able to get hold of some goat's milk for me. The next day, bowing to Lily's desperate entreaties, Aunt April packed up some rice to exchange for milk and went out in the snow. But in that cold March weather, she couldn't get hold of even a single drop of milk to give to a sick child. Lily, you'll have to make do with rice broth. Stop being so selfish. However much Granny Melody tried to persuade her, though, Lily said nothing. That evening Lily was startled by the sound of a pigeon flapping its wings in the garden. And later that night she went down with a fever again and had nightmares of a terrible fire. From inside the red flames that had engulfed the little book room, she could hear Balba and Fern calling, "Help! Help us! Lily, help!" Lily tossed and turned in her sleep. No, no, you can't die. Iris, Robin, I don't want you to burn to death. The little people go away. The day after Lily's condition worsened, an unfamiliar young woman in a headscarf turned up at Aunt April's house covered in snow. She had heard that the Greenwood evacuee girl was sick and so had come to see her, she told them. Finn asked me some time ago to keep an eye on her and to take her some goat's milk to drink from time to time. It's not the right season for milking, but I brought what little I could. Aunt April stared suspiciously at the young woman. Even she could guess that this was one of those salt-of-the-earth women who had evacuated from Tokyo to Hondo. Nevertheless, she was grateful for the milk and showed the young woman into Lily's room. Victoria gazed at Lily sleeping quietly. She felt terribly moved by the sight of her flat body, so slight it was as if there was nothing there under the quilt, and gently ran her fingers through her tangled hair on the dirty pillow. At her touch, Lily opened her eyes and stared at her in surprise. Lily, don't worry, it's me. Drink lots of goat's milk and get better soon, okay? Victoria said, placing a bottle by her pillow. Great tears welled up in Lily's eyes and became an unstoppable flow down her cheeks as she mumbled something. Oh? What was late? Me coming here. Lily shook her head and said something else, but all Victoria could catch was, it's too late. Too late. Lily was staring up at the ceiling. Victoria began to feel bad. It wasn't right for such a small girl as Lily to be so alone and so desperate. She stroked her head and said soothingly, like a doctor, tell me what's on your mind. If it's something I can help with, I will. Tell me everything that's bothering you, Lily. Lily didn't say anything for a long time. Then all of a sudden she began weeping with great convulsive sobs. They've gone. They've gone. They've gone and left me, she wailed. Who have? Your mother? Finn? Asked Victoria frantically, on the verge of tears herself. Lily shook her head. Then, plucking up courage, she said, Victoria, will you look under that sedge hat and see if there is a blue glass there? Victoria did as she was told and looked under the hat. There, just as Lily had said, was a beautiful small sky blue glass. She handed it to Lily. Lily took it in both hands and stroked it lovingly. Then she looked Victoria straight in the eye and said, will you look on top of that shelf near the ceiling and tell me what you see? Behind those books up there. Again, Victoria did as she was told and stepped on the conveniently placed wooden chest so that she could peer onto the smoke-stained shelf. There's nothing here. Except this book, that is. Victoria took the yellow book and sat down with it beside Lily's pillow. It was Robin's beloved book with the tiger in it that he had left behind. You didn't see anything other than that? Nothing at all. Victoria shook her head in silence. Lily had stopped crying and was staring unseeingly at Robin's book. It was getting dark outside. Worried that she might have outstayed her welcome on her first visit to the house, Victoria asked, may I come and see you again? Lily gave a slight nod. In that case, I'll bring some more goat's milk with me next time. And when you start going back to school in spring, Come over to visit me sometimes too, won't you? Lily nodded again. Is there anything you want me to do? Lily thought for a moment. Then she said clearly, put some of the goat's milk in this glass and put it back in the same place. Victoria wondered uneasily whether Lily was delirious with fever, but she did as she was told. Thank you, Lily said. For the first time, something approaching a smile played around the corners of her mouth. Victoria gently patted the bedding in a sisterly fashion and then left. Aunt April and Granny Melody told her that they sincerely hoped she would come again as they saw her off. Not long before, Victoria had received notice from Finn Greenwood that he had enrolled at Kyoto University on March 25th and was now joining the Air Force, so it wouldn't be long before he was sent off to war. She had gone to see his little sister, wanting to at least inform her that the house in Tokyo had burned down on March 10th, and that Finn had now joined the military he hated so much, but now her heart felt heavier than ever. Whatever that little girl had lost when she came here, something must have happened that was even worse than just being ripped from her family. What on earth could have caused such desperation in the little girl? As Victoria climbed up the mountain path, she thought to herself that she would do whatever it took to see even just the trace of a smile on little Lily's thin face. The child really needed a friend. If they started up the children's group again in the spring, she would have to get Lily involved in it. Victoria trudged home alone over the cold snow as the clouds above were lit up by a magnificent sunset. At Puck's, late April came round, and at last the long winter was over. The snow on the distant peaks disappeared in exactly the reverse order of its arrival, first from Mount Izuna, lingering on with the patchy snow near the summit of Mount Kuroheim, and Mount Myoko, still with its sparkling silver winter cover. The mountain birds began singing in the light blue of the dawn, and continued singing in the forests around the lake after the sun had set, expressing their joy at the arrival of spring. Robin wandered through the flowers with his bag slung over his shoulder. The ground cover of violets, dandelions, and fawn lilies was complemented by bushes of vermilion quince blossoms, and higher up on the slopes the cherry, magnolia, plum, and apricot trees briefly bloomed to the accompanying buzz of bee wings. Spring in the mountains comes from below. That was what Puck had said in an unusually candid moment just a fortnight before, and gazing at the skirts of the nearby mountains, he could see that it was true. Spring in the mountains dyed the woods pale pink from the bottom up, and now even the higher slopes were enveloped in the warm pink clouds of blossom, while the lower woods were carpeted with spring flowers. Robin stepped lightly among them, collecting sweet nectar from the flowers with violet petals. His first stroll of spring was more fun than he could ever have imagined during the long years he'd spent confined to the house in Tokyo. It had been just about this time last year that he had witnessed spring for the first time in his life. He had been astonished by its beauty then, but the wonder of spring in Nijiri was something else altogether. The only regret that clouded Robin's enjoyment of his walk was the way they had left without saying a word to Lily. He could still clearly remember the evening of their hurried departure as if it was yesterday. The move had been suddenly decided the same evening they had learnt that they would get no more milk from Lily after that day. It had been partly prompted by Arlo and Tama coming to visit. Even so, they would never have been able to move that night had Puck not turned up too. As the little people stood beside the empty blue glass goblet gazing down on sleeping Lily, they heard the sound of rustling leaves in the garden. Looking out through the lattice window, they saw Arlo and Puck gesturing to them. Puck was spinning round and round the garden, gesticulating frantically. "Come on, hurry up. Come to my place. You can't stay there anymore, surely," he urged. "But Lily's sick." "Are you saying we should leave her behind just like that?" responded Iris. Whirling like crazy through the snowbound garden, he gestured wildly. "But when humans stop giving you milk, you have to leave immediately, don't you? That's the rule of your people." Arlo and Tama joined in. "Quickly, hurry. Do as Puck says and get ready to move right away. We'll carry you on our backs." Bulba and Fern, Robin and Iris all looked at each other. It was true. There was no more milk and, as Puck said, the time had come for them to leave. But what about Lily? It's not as if it's all her fault. But Fern, who had been staring hard at Puck, turned to Bulba and said flatly, "Bulba, let's go." Ever since we began drinking out of the same cup as Lily, I've been having a terrible premonition. We already started breaking the rule then. We can't stay here any longer. Iris and Robin, get ready to leave. We'll do as that little imp says and go with him. There's no other way. Fern's voice was full of sorrow. They all went back to their home on the shelf, and she started putting on her new shoes. Bulba, Robin and Iris did as she said and started packing up their belongings. The garden was already sunk in dusk when Puck gestured, "Bring out your luggage." It took all four of the little people pushing as hard as they could to get the big blanket out of the window. Puck instantly turned into a mini whirlwind and whipped it clear. Arlo and Tama each took one of Bulba's and Fern's heavy trunks in their claws and lifted them away. Puck worked furiously transporting their bedding and kitchen equipment on numerous trips. Finally, all that was left was Robin's book, but it was heavy and the little people were too tired to carry it to the window. "Let's leave it for Lily. It can be our way of saying goodbye," Bulba said to Robin. Robin began shaking his head, but then fell quiet for a few moments. At length he said, "No. I will leave it for Lily, but as a sign that we'll be back one day." Without a word, Iris selected the prettiest of the ribbons she herself had knitted and put it in between its pages. "Cuckoo," urged Arlo in a low voice. The four little people looked down on sick Lily once more. Her eyes were closed. "Lily, when you're able to put milk here by the window for us every day again, we'll come back home, we promise," said Bulba. "Lily, get better soon. We're leaving the blue glass goblet here for you," Fern added. Robin and Iris were sobbing and said nothing. How sad Lily will be when she realizes we've gone. I wish there was some way we could tell her that we're not angry with her, Robin thought to himself. "Lily, goodbye. I am not going to speak a single word until this terrible war is over and we're able to come back home to you. I am going to start knitting a prayer for you and the whole Greenwood family to survive these miserable times," promised Iris from the bottom of her heart. But Lily couldn't hear their faint farewells. As the little people left the place that had been home for the past 6 months and climbed onto the pigeons' backs, they kept turning back for yet another last look. Arlo took Bulba and Fern on his back, and Tama took Iris and Robin, both clad in their squirrel skin coats. With a tremendous flapping of wings, they flew off over the larch forest. Atop a small wooded hill the other side of the larch forest there stood a single small stone shrine. This was Puck's home. It was very old and covered in rotting leaves, with thick moss growing over its foundations. He showed the little people in through the back, while Arlo and Tama set off for home in the gathering darkness. The living quarters were very cramped, and it was impossible to invite their two big friends to stay over. Fern breathed a sigh of relief to find that this strange home was much cleaner and drier than she had expected. The family quickly began unpacking their belongings in the dim light of the handmade lamp. Puck went outside and brought them some clean, fresh water from a nearby stream. "Oh!" exclaimed Bulba upon seeing the bucket. It was a silver cup bearing the trademark of a famous British whiskey manufacturer. "But why?" Bulba began timidly. The little imp gave him a cheeky wink, then took him into the cellar below the shrine. A few minutes later Bulba re-emerged, his face red with joy. "Fern, Iris, Robin, come and have a look. We will be able to live here very well." The three took turns to peer into the cellar. In the dim light, they could see silver foil cheese wrappers. There was enough cheese and honey down there for the Ash family to live on for 5 years. "How come, Puck?" Fern asked. "Where did you get all this food?" said Robin. But the little imp just twisted his large mouth into a grin and didn't answer. Bulba, Fern, and little Robin were all bursting to know how on earth the cellar of this old shrine to a forgotten god deep in the mountains of Japan came to be full of cheese. Puck in his fiery red waistcoat just laughed teasingly. Also in the cellar were several more of the squirrel fur coats he had given to the little people before. Only Iris didn't ask any questions and remained silent. Noticing that she had started knitting something in sparkling spider silk, the little people remembered Lily. They spent their first night after the move drinking water and eating some of the fragrant cheese in silence. Puck gave the room he had been living in to Bulba and his family, and retreated into the larder where acorns, ginkgo nuts, and nutmegs were stored. Even though they were now living with Puck, it was a long time before Balba, Robin, or even Chatty Fern could get any information out of him as to how that cheese and the stylish bucket had come to be in the cellar. However, one day, without any prompting, he told Iris the story as she sat knitting in the shade of some violets behind the shrine. Once upon a time, long, long ago, when Puck had left his mother's house deep in the mountains and started living alone in these peaceful surroundings, he had built a cabin on the mountainside overlooking the lake. At the time, there was not a single human living in the area, and it was a land of rabbits and squirrels and foxes and pheasants and other creatures like Puck himself. Then early one summer, a lone human, tall with a white face, had come and built a cottage that looked quite like a mushroom. The human would come to his cottage every year for the summer months. He never killed any squirrels or rabbits or pheasants, but just napped quietly under the trees, or blew blue smoke through his nostrils, or sang songs, and over time Puck grew steadily used to him. He really did seem to be fond of this place and everything in it, from the trees to the grass and even the spiders' webs. One day, Puck was overcome with curiosity about the source of the blue smoke that came out of the human's nose, and so while he was asleep under a tree, Puck took the hot, brown stick that was in his mouth and, imitating him, put it to his own mouth. But the awful stink from it made him faint. When he came to again, he was lying in bed beneath a round face that made a tick-tock noise in the man's cottage. He made to jump up and run away, but his head spun and he couldn't get up. Luckily, the big man was in the next room and didn't come in to see him. Presently, the thing that was going tick-tock, tick-tock suddenly shouted out dong dong, and the door beneath the round face sprang open and a small figure about the same height as himself came unhurriedly out. It was an elderly woman with gray hair and bent back. It was only much later that he learned that she was one of the little people and lived alone in the thing that was called a clock. The little old woman walked over to the window and climbed up to the windowsill where there was a blue glass goblet filled to the brim with something white. A blue glass goblet? Iris started in surprise. Yes, a blue glass goblet, just like the one you had on your windowsill, said Puck. That big man only stayed in the mountains over the summer, but the gray-haired little woman lived in the clock in his cottage all year round. That's why, ever since I saw a similar type of clock arrive at the house you were living in, I was expecting one of your type to come out of it. Iris opened her eyes wide in surprise. Puck puffed his chest out and said, "It was because of that little old woman that I knew that little people like you could survive the winter without the milk in that blue glass by eating cheese made from it instead. And she also taught me how to tell the time and how to make warm coats from squirrel fur. And before she left, she gave me all the cheese and honey that's in the cellar here." The hint of a smile appeared on Iris's face. She now knew for sure that she and her family were not the only little people left in the world and, what's more, that this place deep in the mountains had been home to an old woman from England. Puck sensed that Iris had been gradually drawn into the story and soon began to lose interest in it. That little person went away. The big man took her back to their country. This all happened long ago. Since then, other people have started living around here too, and the forests and thickets have been cleared to grow crops, and the rabbits and squirrels and foxes have all gone deeper into the mountains. Only I've stayed, since I have the cheese, and I thought that one day that little gray-haired old woman might come back. He looked increasingly bored with the story, and now began spinning around the meadow of violets. "And the cottage?" gestured Iris. The cottage was reduced to ashes some time ago. A passing human stayed there and left something burning, so it caught fire and all that was left was ashes, he said, and disappeared off through meadow spinning like the wind. Robin began wondering what Lily was doing. Thinking of her lying sick in bed while he'd been having so much fun outside, he couldn't bear it any longer. He had already finished collecting the nectar from the flowers, so he took the path through the grass to check up on Aunt April's house in the larch forest. Just yesterday, Arlo, who had recently moved with Tama to the woods near the little shrine, told him that Lily had recovered from her illness and that he'd seen her going on her way to school these past 2 or 3 days. Unnoticed by anyone, Robin slipped into the garden of Aunt April's house. Fresh green shoots were appearing on the tree where Lily had made Ethan tie the ribbon for Arlo all those months ago, and he could see a woodpecker's tail feathers poking out of the round hole of its nest. Robin looked up nostalgically at the lattice window. The blue glass was still there, and it was full of white milk. Robin couldn't believe his eyes. Lily was putting milk out for them again. He rushed back to the little shrine and wasted no time in telling his mother, "Lily's put some milk out for us by the window again. She hasn't forgotten us, she's putting milk out for us." Fern told him quietly, "I know that. Today is the third day she has put it there. I hope she keeps it up. If she manages it for 77 days in a row, we'll be able to go back to her. But these are difficult times, so I'm not sure she'll be able to." Neither Iris nor Bulba said anything. Even here in Puck's little shrine beneath the trees, they had started hearing the faint sounds of war. Now and then a terrible siren would wail and send the humans running. There hadn't been any air raids around this peaceful lake yet, but the siren warning of enemy planes was reaching them. With the situation being like this, it would probably be even harder for Lily to get hold of milk than it had been during the snowy winter. "Robin, bring your pencil. Use it to make a mark on that pillar for every day that Lily puts milk out for us so that we'll know whether or not she manages to keep it up for 77 days, Fern told him. Robin did as he was told and made 3 marks on the shrine's old wooden pillar. And he promised Fern and the others that from now on he would drop by Aunt April's house after his daily walk to check whether the milk had been left by the window there. "Come home, little people." Robin made his marks on the shrine's pillar in blocks of 5, like so. Aye. Soon there were 7 blocks, then 8. He borrowed Puck's bucket so he could take the milk from the blue glass goblet back to his family. It was the same powdered milk that Lily had given them before. She had asked her mother to send her a tin of powdered milk for Bulba and his family and made it up for them in their glass every day. After a while, the contents of the glass began disappearing, which made her heart sing. "Come home, little people. If you're still alive, please come home to me." Seeing the way the familiar blue glass sparkled with new life, Lily sensed that her plea had reached the hearts of the 4 little people. "However hungry I get, this time I'll put some milk out by the window for you every day without fail for as long as I possibly can." As they drank the milk Lily had started leaving out for them again after so long, the little people thought how delicious it was. Robin made up his mind to take the silver bucket to collect the milk every day. One day in June, when there were 10 blocks of marks on the pillar, Robin found the glass on the windowsill empty. It was a nasty wet afternoon, but he had set out cheerfully with a large magnolia leaf covering his head, only to return to the shrine dispirited with the empty bucket. "It looks like Lily's run out of milk again," he said sadly. "What a pity. If she'd managed to keep it up for another 27 days, we'd have been able to go home to her. But in these terrible times, it can't be helped," Fern said, disappointed. However nice this shrine was to live in, it grew damp and chilly inside whenever it rained for any length of time. Noticing Bulba holding his knees in silence, she sighed and said, "Bulba, wrap your legs in the blanket so your knees don't catch cold." Bulba was stitching a pair of simple shoes for Puck using the skin from some smoked salmon in the cellar for leather. At his side, his daughter Iris was knitting in silence. Ever since they had left Lily, she had kept her promise not to utter a single word, and to spend all her time knitting one long rainbow-colored ribbon until the war ended and they could go home to her. Iris had often heard from her mother that the knitting needles she had inherited from her grandmother Beatrice Belladonna had magical powers, although Fern couldn't say what form that magical power might take. Iris's rainbow ribbon grew longer and coiled onto the floor like a river. One day, as she worked her needles furiously, it occurred to her that if she carried on knitting, eventually the ribbon would grow long enough to girth the entire world they lived in. When that happened, all the terrible wars on Earth would end and the suffering of all the many children like Lily would be no more. In order for Lily to be happy, peace had to reign in the entire Greenwood family, and for everyone in Japan to be happy, peace had to reign throughout the entire world. "That's right, Iris. Keep knitting. Don't talk, just keep knitting. When this ribbon grows long enough to encircle the entire Earth, war will end and people will be happy again," whispered the mysterious ivory knitting needles as they moved in Iris's hands like live creatures. "But why? Why me? How come my little me can do something so big? Iris wondered without allowing her hands to rest even for a moment. Puck, normally so naughty, now became Iris's devoted assistant. He wanted so much to help her that he could hardly contain himself. As quick-witted as ever, he now went all over the mountain gathering piles of the fine thread she wanted, just as once he had brought her bird feathers. He gathered cocoons from the oak silk moths and spun them into thread for her. As he span frantically, the strong and pretty thread grew quickly, and he persuaded Fern to give him some of the dye to make it rainbow-colored. "Thank you, Puck." Iris would gesture each time he brought it to her. Sometimes she would grace him, and only him, with a smile, which caused him to blush and rush off around the mountain like the wind. The pencil marks on the pillar in the little shrine continued increasing in number, as the little people felt Lily's insistent call to them, "Come home. Come home." One day, just as Robin was on his way out with the silver bucket to collect the milk, Balba said to him, "Robin, why don't you write Lily a letter? Maybe it's about time we let her know that we are safe and well." And so Robin took his time over writing her a letter. He used 2 pages from the notebook before he was finished. "Cuckoo. I'll take it for you," said Arlo, who'd been waiting outside. "Cuckoo. Let me take it," added Tama. But Puck grabbed the letter and, spinning round and round into a little whirlwind, went straight over to Lily's house. But she was far away at the time, cutting grass on a mountainside with her classmates from school. Lily wielded her scythe lightly, rapidly felling the grass. Under the glare of the July sun, the fragrance of the freshly cut grass grew stronger. She was no longer wearing her Korean shoes, but the same straw sandals as her classmates, treading down the grass with her suntanned feet. None of the other children helped her, but now she was able to cut grass and bundle it up all by herself. The school provided the children with potatoes and sweet potatoes as snacks, and whoever cut the most grass would be given the biggest, so they all brushed away their sweat and competed with each other to cut the most. "Ouch!" Suddenly Ethan let out a yell and pressed his hand towel over his leg. His shin had been cut by a tiny spinning whirlwind. The others shot him sympathetic looks, but didn't stop their work. Then the pile of grass he'd cut flew up into the air and over to where the other children were at work. Ethan lost his temper. "Hey, that's not fair. Stop nicking my grass." Lily looked at Ethan in surprise as he angrily grabbed some grass from her pile and stormed back over to his own. "Ethan, don't," she started, but then all of a sudden her eyes lit up. There on the ground by her feet where the grass had blown over a moment ago were 2 small white sheets of paper. Robin. Her heart leapt as she picked up the familiar sheets of notebook paper. She no longer cared how much of her grass Ethan took. All she could think of was the letter from the little people, and she glanced restlessly around wondering whether Robin and Iris were nearby. But there was no sign of any of them in amongst the pampas grass and gentian blooms. Carrying the grass on their backs, the children went back to the school, where one by one their loads were weighed. Chewing on the small sweet potato she was given, Lily climbed up to the mountain pass as fast as she could to read Robin's letter. "Lily, we are fine. We was happy to get your milk. Please keep giving us milk for 77 days. We made friends with Puck. We're with you, Lily. Balba, Fern and Iris want to come home quick. See you soon." It was quite a long letter for Robin. And for the first time she felt she could tell her mother about the little people having left her. While she was ill, and even since she had recovered, she couldn't bring herself to write the truth in her letters home. How could she tell her mother, who had entrusted the little people's care to her all those years ago in the little book room, that she had lost them? She couldn't add to her mother's troubles, not after she'd stayed in Tokyo despite the terrible air raids in order to keep sending supplies to her father inside, and after her eldest son Finn had joined the army. Lily carefully folded up Robin's letter and put it in her air raid bag, along with all the letters from home, and the miniature picture book that Robin had left behind. Tucked inside the book, along with the pretty ribbon from Iris, was a photo of Finn that Joy had sent her recently. It was the photo that Lily had taken of him on Benton Island, and had come out very well. "I'll definitely get the little people back. Of course I'll keep putting out milk for them for 77 days in a row. This time Lily was determined to make the can of powdered milk she'd received from Victoria in Hondo last for 77 days. If the powdered milk alone could last for about 50 days, she would somehow manage to get hold of goat's milk for the remaining 20 or so days. By mid-August, there were 9 blocks of Robin's pencil marks on the pillar, and Lily could see the bottom of the can of milk. It was the Bon Festival and school was out, and all she could think of was how to get hold of some goat's milk. One day, just after lunch, Ethan's mother came to Aunt April's house. She had come in a hurry, not even putting on her sedge hat, and was telling Aunt April something, her voice shrill. Suddenly, the two women burst into tears. Scared out of her wits, Lily went looking for Granny Melody and found her quietly weeping out front. "Lily, Lily, come here." Hearing Aunt April calling her, she went fearfully through. Aunt April never cried, but now her big eyes were filled with tears. "Lily," she said, as if wringing the words out of herself, "Japan has lost the war." There was a broadcast by His Imperial Majesty, and Mrs. Toyama heard it. "Lily, poor you. It's been so hard on you, and now we've gone and lost, and all those people died for nothing," wailed Ethan's mother, overcome with emotion. Lily too began to cry, but deep down a feeling of joy began bubbling up inside her. She'd never believed she'd live to see the end of the war, but it was now over. "I'll be able to see Daddy again, and Mummy and Finn and Shin, and I'll go back to Tokyo and we'll all live together again." That night Lily saw lights coming on all over the mountain, sparkling in the dark. The closest one must have been from Ethan's house. Aunt April must have noticed too, for she took down the heavy blackout curtain from the kitchen window. As if drawn by the lights, the two of them went up to the mountain pass and gazed down on their pretty reflections in the lake. "I really wish Granny Melody could see this," Lily said from the bottom of her heart. Aunt April looked at her. Then they smiled at each other and went back to their brightly lit house. "Now if only Robin and the others would come home. That's all I ask for," Lily thought feelingly as she got into bed. Dark days. The war might have ended, but for Lily life went on as before without any big changes. A letter from her mother in Tokyo arrived giving the happy news that her father had been acquitted of the crime of treason and had at long last been allowed to leave prison. Worryingly, though, it also said that he was ill and would have to stay in hospital for a while. Most disappointing of all, nowhere in that letter did it say, "I'm coming to get you, Lily." When the war had ended on August 15th, Lily had thought she would soon be able to go back home to Tokyo, but now that the hope of going home had been kindled in her, Lily couldn't bear to stay here in Nigeria a moment longer, and she felt increasingly irritable as the days went by. But there was one bright point. She'd been able to make up with her friend and classmate Ethan. Around August 20th, she'd realized there was just one spoonful of milk left in the bottom of the can, and she was suddenly seized with anxiety. Robin had written that she should continue for 77 days, but there were still 25 or 6 days to go. What if she couldn't leave any milk for them? There was nothing for it. She would have to swallow her pride and go to Ethan's house. She went clutching Aunt April's sickle firmly in her hand. "Somehow I've got to persuade Ethan to let me cut grass in exchange for some milk." She rehearsed over and over again what she would say to him, and also imagined herself flinching at being coldly rejected by his family. But she couldn't give up. She just had to get hold of some goat's milk somehow or other. As she climbed up the mountain path, she bumped into Ethan coming the other way with a bundle of grass on his back. Unthinkingly, she came to an abrupt halt. Ethan looked at her in surprise. He looked tired and somewhat dejected. Lily didn't say anything and just stood there glaring at him. "Lily," he said after a few moments. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." He mumbled nervously, his eyes downcast. Lily was so taken aback that the words she'd been rehearsing over and over again came tumbling easily out. "Ethan, let me cut grass for you. And in exchange, give me some milk." Ethan stared at her, flabbergasted. "You still want some goat's milk?" "Yes, I do. I only need a little. But I want some every day." She was so determined that in the end Ethan had to give in and agreed to let her have about half a bowlful every day. They went together to the mountainside to cut grass daily until school started again in September, and in return she received some milk for the little people. You're lucky, Lily. Your dad and your brothers are alive, Ethan said to her one day. Another of his elder brothers had recently been taken by the army too. I don't know what's good and what isn't anymore. It's true that I happily cheered Bonsai when he went off to the front, but then, when I think that he won't be coming back either, I get so angry I can't stand it anymore. My mom doesn't say anything, but sometimes she just sits in a daze, a far-off look in her eyes. I can't bear seeing her like that while she's out at work in the vegetable fields. My brother Finn hasn't come back yet, Lily told him. What he said was true, you know. There's nothing good about war at all. As soon as he gets back, he'll come and get me. Then the two of them promised that, come September, they would start collecting firewood in the mountains for Ethan's house and Aunt April's house. By now there were 13 blocks of marks on the pillar in the shrine. Fern breathed a sigh of relief as Robin again returned with milk Lily had left by the window for them. Oh, good. If she keeps it up for another 12 days, we'll be able to go back to her. Robin pouted. But I don't want to go back. I want to stay living here with Puck. He was now utterly captivated by the dizzying speed with which his friend could see through to what was in people's hearts. Don't say such stupid things. Fern grew really angry at her son's response. Do you think you can stay here forever? Think about your father's health. It was only the beginning of September, but Balba's legs hurt so much that he now spent all day in bed. During their stay in the mountains, the children had grown strong and suntanned, but Balba and Fern had become visibly weaker. Arlo told me that Japan ended up losing the war. Everyone who moved from the city to the countryside will soon be going back. If Lily suddenly goes back to Tokyo, what on earth shall we do? Robin grinned. In that case, we can stay here with Puck until his cellar is empty, then go back to Tokyo with Arlo. Fern lost her temper. How can you say that, Robin? Think about it. Right now, even if Lily was looking straight at us, she wouldn't be able to see us. Until she's completed her atonement by putting out milk for us 77 days in a row, we're invisible to her. If she goes away now, we will never see her again. I don't want that to happen. Robin stared at his mother. Then he gave a mocking laugh and went outside. Mid-September came around. The 77th day had finally arrived, and Lily's hand shook as she poured the goat's milk into the freshly washed blue glass goblet. Every day when she came back from the mountains, she would check the glass by the window, but she had not even once seen any of the little people there. Nevertheless, every day the blue glass sparkled prettily, and the milk Lily poured into it would disappear from one moment to the next. This was the only evidence she had that the little people had been taking it. Lily bundled up the kindling that she and Ethan had brought from the mountain and carried it to the shed, which by now was almost full. Afterwards, she went to her room and looked at the window in surprise. The blue glass goblet she had placed there earlier was nowhere to be seen. What if it's fallen down and broken? She thought in alarm and looked below the window. But it wasn't there either. She heard a rustling of dry leaves in the back garden and ran outside in her bare feet, just in time to catch sight of something blue sparkling just by the start of the larch forest. As she approached, a little whirlwind spinning round and round, with none other than the blue glass goblet sparkling at its center, moved off into the trees. Wait! Give me back my glass! Wait! Forgetting how much her bare feet hurt, Lily ran after it as fast as she could. Beyond the dense woodland, the big evening sun was beginning to set as she ran into the cold golden light of the forest. There was a flapping of wings as a couple of pigeons, one gray and one white, flew up into the air. Then she noticed a small crumbling stone shrine. There were voices like the rustling of leaves coming from inside it. Suddenly something about the size of a large grasshopper surged towards her feet. It was little Fern. Startled, Lily crouched down and scooped her up in her hands. Fern's hair was disheveled and she was gasping for breath. What happened next was something that Lily would never forget as long as she lived. The small blue whirlwind started spinning around her, round and round and round until she became quite dizzy, and then out of the crumbling little shrine flew Balba, still wrapped in his quilt, followed by Iris, still knitting something sparkly. And last of all came Robin, a silver bucket on his head. Puck, go faster! Faster, shouted Fern in a thin, shrill voice from Lily's palm. In a flash, the whirlwind stopped and the blue glass goblet wobbled on the path like a spinning top coming to a halt. Dazed, Lily noticed that it was empty. After a few moments, Fern shouted at her, "Lily, please take us home now." Lily came to herself with a start, picked up the old worn blanket where it had fallen on the ground and gently spread it out so that Fern and the others could get on it. A cricket chirred in the grass. Holding the little people on the blanket in one hand and the blue glass in the other, Lily went home in the deepening sunset. There was a rustling in the grass, but Lily didn't see anything. In her joy at the little people coming home with her after such a long absence, she didn't notice the strange little figure crying there in the undergrowth. Hidden in the grass, Puck buried his face in his arm and wept. If he had done nothing, Robin and Iris would no doubt have stayed living with him forevermore. Today, the 77th day, Robin had refused to go to collect the milk from Lily. "I'm not going back to Lily's. I'm staying here with you," Robin told him. Puck had looked away. If Robin had told him goodbye, he would have gone and spilt Lily's milk so that he wouldn't have been able to leave. Then he looked over at Iris, sitting there silently knitting the sparkling ribbon as she always did. Her eyes said, "Me too. I'll stay here. I'll keep knitting without uttering a single word until this ribbon is long enough to encircle the world. And I'll stay here with you while I knit." If Iris's eyes had been saying goodbye, Puck would never have let her go back to Lily. If he hadn't loved these little people so much, he would have stopped them from leaving. But as it was, he had gone straight out and snatched up the blue glass goblet full of milk that Lily had left by the window and brought it to Fern in the shrine. Fern had exclaimed, "Lily. Oh, I'll be able to see Lily again," and dashed outside. Puck had splattered the milk around and driven Bulba and Iris and little Robin out after her. And the little people had gone away, leaving him alone once more. The two pigeons, up on a high branch, began singing their evening song as, unknown to anyone, poor Puck sat beneath the grass, black in the darkness, and wept. Once again, the first snowfall of winter came to Nigeri. Every day, Lily waited for a letter from her mother telling her she could come home. But in Joy's letters to her, she never once wrote the words, "come home." Neither did she write anything about Finn. All she told Lily was that her father was still in hospital and that her other brother Shin was fine, nothing more. In her letters to Aunt April, though, she wrote in great detail that Lily's father had tuberculosis due to his prolonged period of confinement and terrible malnutrition, and that his prognosis was not good. One day when the snow was falling thick and fast, someone came to visit Lily. It was Victoria from Hondo. She had often visited Lily when she had been sick, and Aunt April gave her a warm welcome as she turned up covered in snow, leading the goat behind her. "I came to say goodbye," she said, coming straight to the point. "My friends have all gone back to Tokyo already. I thought I could maybe ask you to keep this goat. To tell the truth, I should have left it at the house where I've been staying, but I really wanted Lily to have it." Aunt April accepted the snow-covered goat and took it away into the earthen-floored part of the house. "Have you heard about Finn?" Lily shook her head. "You poor thing. Your brother was killed in action on August 8th. If only the war had ended just a week earlier, he would have come home safe and sound." Victoria didn't cry. She spoke quietly and dispassionately, looking straight at Lily. "I'm sorry to be telling this to one so young, but I just have to inform someone who knows him. Finn won't be coming home. Ever. A friend of his told me, on August 8th, Finn Greenwood sacrificed his 19 years of life for our country, is what he said." Aunt April came back in and, putting her arm around Victoria's rigid shoulders, sat her down by the sunken hearth. Then she wiped the tears from Lily's cheeks with the rough palms of her hands. "Is that so? I'm so sorry for Joy too." Big tears dripped from Aunt April's eyes into the ashes of the fire. Little Lily noticed that Granny Melody, too, was weeping silently as she lay in bed. And their world was enveloped in the faint rustle of the falling snow. Finally, Victoria stood up. Aunt April tried to hold her back, telling her to stay, but Victoria started getting herself ready to leave. Lily ran into the other room and came back with her air raid bag and a paper package. "This was from Finn to you," she said, pressing the package into Victoria's hands. "He brought me some sparklers and told me to give half of them to you, and so I'm giving them to you now." Then she took a small book out of her air raid bag. Tucked inside the pages was a photograph, which she handed to Victoria. A pained look briefly crossed Victoria's face. She packed away the paper package and photograph and put her hand on the door. "I'm taking some of the rice I grew here back to Tokyo with me. I'll give some of it to your mother and father." Victoria went off alone in the thick snow. Just like the day she had seen Finn off, Lily watched Victoria with her pack on her back quickly disappear from sight along the mountain path during the first heavy snowfall of the year. Lily goes home. The long, long winter came to an end, and once again spring came to Lake Najeri. On the path beside the school, where the cherries, peaches, and plums were briefly in bloom, Lily was waiting for her mother Joy. She had been in year 3 when she came here and had already entered year 5 this April. Her father, Drake, was finally over the worst of his illness, and Joy was at last able to leave him to come and collect her daughter. Having finished talking to Lily's teachers about her school transfer, she came out of the office and said, "Lily, your teacher told me that when you first arrived here you were quite a weakling and a burden on the rest of your classmates when doing the grass-cutting work. However, you soon grew as strong as all the others, and now the classroom is going to feel really lonely without you. Ethan especially is going to miss you," she said. Lily was thin but had grown tall, and Joy thought she now looked as though she could depend on her. "But the one who's going to miss me most when I leave is the goat Jiro." "The goat that Victoria left with us," said Lily, then clamped her mouth shut. Together, they climbed the path where dandelions were in flower up to Aunt April's house. "It was good of Victoria to remember that glass goblet," Joy said. "She came to see us out of the blue, together with a young foreign woman." "Lily, don't you think it's amazing? That foreign woman was the daughter of Miss McLaughlin's niece. That means that the Miss McLaughlin who left Balba and the others with your father when he was a little boy was her great-aunt. And that same Miss McLaughlin is still alive and well, now aged 84, living in England. She showed me a color photograph of her standing in a field of pale purple heather, eagerly awaiting the day Balba and his family come home." Lily caught her breath. Do we have to give the little people back? This was something that had never occurred to her, even in her dreams. "Well, it's up to us. But you know, that young Miss McLaughlin who came to see us had been leaving milk in a blue glass goblet exactly like the one we have in the window of the hotel she was staying in." Victoria happened to be visiting a friend in the same hotel and saw it. Since it was rather unusual, she asked her friend about it, and was doubly surprised when it turned out that the woman was looking for someone by the name of Greenwood. But I don't want to give them back. I lost them once and they only just came back to me." "I heard about that," said Joy quietly. "Victoria told me they'd left you while you were ill, and we all cried over that. Me, Victoria, and also the young Miss McLaughlin, and making you give them back now, after all this time looking after them." She went on hesitantly, "But Lily, back in Tokyo the little book room doesn't exist anymore, you know. How can you give them a safe place where they can live peacefully now and in the future?" Lily couldn't answer. Joy continued disconsolately, "Finn still treasured the little people even after growing up, didn't he? Victoria was really sad about that, you know. She wished she'd been able to hear about them from Finn himself." The two of them walked in silence through the larch forest, fragrant with fresh buds. "But then why did Miss McLaughlin leave them behind in the first place?" asked Lily accusingly. Joy averted her eyes. With a distant look, she answered, "You know, Miss McLaughlin decided to come to Japan because she had heard it was a small, peaceful country where the pure heart that Westerners had forgotten still existed. That was in about the 20th year of Meiji, around 1888. She left her native England to come all the way to our country with the intention of dedicating her life to being an educator here. But instead of this pure heart, what she found in Japan was an intense, almost insane drive to catch up with Western civilization. During her 20 years here, the Japan she had sought gradually disappeared. She couldn't bear the fact that the poor, who were pure of heart, were oppressed by the military, government officials, and the rich. She wrote about this for a magazine, and as a result, she was forced to leave the country. At that time, Fern was already expecting a child, and taking her and Balba with her in third class on the ship was out of the question, and so she gave them to Drake, who was the pupil she most trusted to look after them. This is what the young Miss McLaughlin told Victoria and me not long ago. And she also told us that her great-aunt, the elder Miss McLaughlin, never doubted for a moment that, even during that terrible war, Drake or whoever he had entrusted the little people to had kept them alive and well somewhere in Japan. So, Lily, let's send Balba and his family back to England. Daddy's come home safely, so now let's make one elderly Western woman's dream come true. We should let her know that in the Japan she trusted, the pure heart needed to keep the little people alive did exist. Lily quickened her pace. Perhaps she should send the little people back to the old lady in England. Adults would think that was a beautiful thing to do. But Lily didn't think so. Why should she have to give them and the blue glass goblet up, just when she got them back? She stormed up the hill so fast that Joy couldn't keep up and was left behind on the mountain path, alone with the strains of a bush warbler song. The day came for Lily to go home. Aunt April and blind Granny Melody both looked as if they had suddenly aged, and they looked very sad, too. Lily took her mother through the larch forest to Ethan's house to say goodbye, and Joy and Ethan's mother had a long talk, while neither Ethan nor Lily said anything. Then it was time for Lily and her mother to leave, and Ethan promised that this autumn too he would cut enough grass to feed Jiro the goat over the winter. When they got back to Aunt April's house, Lily took out the old basket and started packing for the little people. The night before, she had told Balba and Fern and Robin and Iris that she would be taking them back to Tokyo with her, and also about Miss McLaughlin. To begin with, the little people hadn't understood what she was talking about. Even now, Lily wasn't happy about sending the little people back to England, and she hadn't been able to explain the situation very well to them. So we'll be able to see Miss McLaughlin again? When Fern and Balba finally understood what Lily was getting at, a strange expression of sadness mixed with joy spread over their faces. That's right. And all I'll be left with is the blue glass goblet. Iris continued knitting without a word, and a hint of a smile flitted across Robin's face. Lily spread the blue jumper that her mother had knitted for her over the bottom of the basket. It had been new when she came here, although it was now quite grimy from mountain life. But the wool was still soft and pliable, and it was the best possible cushion for the little people. She wrapped the blue glass in a clean handkerchief and put it in her own luggage. This would be her only memento of the little people. Then she stood on the long chest and peered on top of the shelf. Only Balba and Fern were waiting there, their travel preparations complete. Lily gently transferred the two of them to the basket. "What about Robin and Iris?" she asked. Balba shook his head sadly. Fern hid her face in her hands and crouched down on the floor of the basket. Robin and Iris had run away. Suddenly realizing this, Lily rushed to the thicket. The crumbling small shrine sat hushed as before. "Robin. Iris. Come back. Come back to Tokyo with me. Robin. Iris. Come back." Lily's voice dissipated in the forest in vain, and there was no answer. Two pigeons rose from the treetops with a flapping of wings. "Robin. Iris. Come back." Lily put her mouth close up to the entrance to the shrine and called for all she was worth. But there was no reply, just the call of the grasses rustling in the evening breeze. Lily went back to the house. And she and Joy went to the station, taking just Balba and Fern with them. As the whistle on Lily's train blew as it pulled out of Kashiwabara Station, the little imp Puck was dancing around the little shrine in the forest, drunk with joy at finding Robin and Iris sitting there waiting for him. "You came back. I bet you're sad at leaving, Lily. But still, you want to live here with me, right?" He danced round and round the woods with his eyes glittering and hair flying, a fiery red little whirlwind.